My screen has started. And I'm hoping to see Frances on the screen next to me there. Wonderful, there she is. Hello, Frances.
Hello.
Thank you so much for agreeing to join us. It's really, I'm so thrilled that you're here. And I guess you need very little introduction for the people on this call, but for anyone who doesn't know who you are, you're a trained horticulturalist and an author of 4 books, I think. And you have managed to find your way onto our TV screens with you're on Gardener's World, aren't you, with Monty Don, and Love Your Garden with Alan Titchmarsh. That's right, isn't it?
That's right, yes.
And we discovered that you are a big fan of woofing. I think it was a sharp-eyed woofer who spotted you on a podcast, Kitchen Garden Magazine podcast, if I'm correct. And on that, you were saying that woof is a wonderful thing, and you supported it, and you'd done some. So I just thought maybe to start, you can elaborate on how you came across woof and what you've done in the past.
Sure. Well, firstly, thank you for having me. It's very nice to be here. So basically, I came across woofing when I was at uni. I was up in Edinburgh at the Botanics up there and had never heard of it. I came through a very, very traditional route in horticulture, kind of country private garden. It was open to the public, but very old-fashioned, not very questioning of what I was taught, as any young person isn't, And then I went to university and I met all these amazing folk who had all these amazingly different backgrounds and heard about woofing through that, which was a complete revelation to me. Lots of my fellow students up there, who I was actually visiting last week and picked their brains about all of their woofing, they had done it in various places around the world and in the UK, and told me all about it. And from then on, as part of my degree, I had to do volunteering anyway, to get work experience, and found that a really liberating thing to do in general, because it gives you the chance to be in a space and learn from the people in that space without the pressure of being paid, or it's often a much more relaxed environment for working. So I really loved that. And then yeah, if you can combine it with some traveling and meet some lovely folk, and especially as a kind of lone traveler, which I often am, to have been able to go all over the world and volunteer in different garden settings and farms and all sorts of places, being put up and fed in exchange for a bit of learning experience, really. I just have absolutely loved it. I've been actually, I haven't done as much woofing as I wanted. My big plan in 2020 was to go woofing. Obvious things put pay to that. I was planning a trip to India and possibly to Portugal as well. Wanted to do an olive harvest, but I've been to the south of France, did a grape harvest. I went to the Caribbean and worked in a botanical garden there. So yeah, there are loads of opportunities, and it's just, I think doing volunteering is something I've always been a fan of, and I've always encouraged people as much as possible to do it, because it's such an incredible life experience. You're not going there to make money, you're not being driven by that. You're sort of back to this much more sustainable and natural way of living, where you do a few hours work and then you get fed and put up, and you can really enjoy that simpler life. I think it's a real benefit to so many people, and a really good bit of information if you want to learn about a whole new skill. And it's not just farming or gardening, but I know one of my friends went to Ireland and then to Northumberland for some straw bale and then timber frame house building work, which he learned all about through woofing. So there's a whole range of stuff to do if you want to learn something. I think it's one of the best ways to do it.
Well, that's fantastic. That's a great recommendation. Thank you very much. And that's something that we always try and make very clear, that it is an educational experience. The learning part of it is something very important and central to what woof is all about. So can you relate maybe some of your favorite experiences, either yours or you said your friends had a wealth of experiences around the world? Are there any particular stories that spring to mind for you?
Well, I've always been very jealous of my friend Fiona, who went to Canada and worked in Canada for a summer. And she's got lots of stories about that, including getting lost in a canyon in a flood and nearly getting caught by a bear, which she was telling me all about the other day. Not that that's woofing related, but still those kinds of adventures. But for me, I think, well, the two experiences I've been on through woofing, actually when I went to Barbados, I didn't go through woofing. I didn't realize it was a woofing destination until I actually already got there. So I did volunteering exactly the same as I would have if I'd been a woofer. But yeah, so that was just an incredible experience for me, but also an incredible experience for the garden there. That was Andromeda Botanical Garden, and they actually got some recognition on the BBC, because once Gardeners World heard I was going, they wanted to come and film it. So it was brilliant, because they came, and actually it wasn't brilliant for me because it slightly took over my my trip. I was there for 6 weeks, and a whole week of it was spent doing filming rather than doing woofing. But yeah, to be able to go there and then to give them the exposure on television completely changed their journey as well. And from then on, they've had volunteers all the time where they were struggling to get them. It raised their profile, and now they're, well, for years since, I'm still in touch with Sharon, and she always emails me and says they've had so many volunteers coming because of that, and have been able to do so much with the garden through that. So yeah, it's really great. And then just going to the south of France and doing a grape harvest was incredible, because I got to learn so much about how, with farming, well, with also I'm a fan of drinking wine, so seeing that process and just how it happens, from how much hard work actually is involved, and just learning from these amazing young guys who were running this organic vineyard in the middle of the Muscat region of around Montpellier. And they were the only organic one in the whole complex of fields, and all their neighbours couldn't quite get it. They were just like, well, it's full of weeds, what are you doing? But the wine that they were able to produce through being organic and doing all that, and the hard work of weeding huge amounts of weeds from between their vines, and every other field around was just these clinical, completely unbiodiverse spaces that had been sprayed with so many chemicals just to keep them free of weeds. It was really, really inspiring, just to see that, and then to see how much more full of life their vineyard was than everybody around them, and to sort of see those maverick people who are going out and doing it in the face of traditions that they assume are just how it's done, and people always have assumed it's how it's done. And I think that organizations that promote that kind of sustainable approach to agriculture and horticulture is really how it's got to be more and more. I think more and more people are realizing that. So to be able to go and see these working spaces and how people are managing to have a good yield and produce with organic principles is really fantastic.
That's so wise. And so Sue Coppard, the founder of Woof, will be hearing from her later on. We've got a little video presentation from Sue, but that's why she elected to be or to apply to organic farms in the very first instance, because she correctly assumed that there would be that enhanced need for willing hands on help, because of the lack of chemicals, and because there's more manual stuff to do in terms of weeding and doing that all by hand. And yeah, so another thing that you said, it leads me on to thinking about this obsession that we have as British people of the clean and tidy garden, everything chopped back and nothing left for habitat. And I have heard more people talking, so rewilding seems to be quite a buzzword at the moment, and I have heard of more people talking about leaving more of that stuff for habitat, also integrating more your ornamentals with your vegetables. So I'm starting to feel like it's gaining traction. As a professional and somebody who knows what's on trend, would you agree with that? Is that something that you, oh, by your face maybe not, but
I assume that I'll know what's on trend. I'm so out of what's on trend. And I think, like anybody, the sorts of people that you spend your time with are often the sorts of people who are quite similar to you. So I completely agree with you that the more people I speak to, this seems to be more of a thing. And I really, really hope that it is a general feeling that more people are getting to want to support wildlife and habitat, you know, and biodiversity in their gardens and hopefully in their farms as well. Although I know that farms are often more dictated by things like finance and incentives like that, maybe, rather than gardens. So there are different things at play there, but I really do feel that there is a movement towards this. I think a lot of people like the idea of it, and then the reality is sometimes you feel like you're being lazy, you know, that there are social elements of it. You know, I don't have a garden myself, I just have an allotment, and there's definitely a sort of social side to not wanting it to be too weedy for the sake of your neighbours. You know, there's a bit of etiquette going on there, which I have tried to just explain to my neighbours when I'm letting some weeds grow. And usually they're really okay with it, as long as, you know, if there's certain weeds, you try and get them up before they go to seed or something like that. But I know one instance I had last year was growing some ragwort on my allotment, and a very kindly neighbour came up and informed me that I needed to get rid of it. It's a really vilified plant, which I, you know, if obviously if you have livestock and you're using it to make hay, that would be, you know, very poisonous. But actually, as a growing plant, most livestock it ignores it. And on an allotment site, I'm not going to eat it. So there's no reason for people to be so cautious about it, but they are. And this guy came up and told me I had to remove it, and I pointed out to him the probably 100 or so cinnabar moths that were feeding on it, and they require ragwort. That's their only food source. And he didn't know what a cinnabar moth was. He was probably in his 80s or so, and very traditional, that traditional allotment sort of idea that we have. And once he saw all the caterpillars all over the ragwort, he was really like, wow, that's amazing. And then the next time I came to my plot, there was a little group of retired men standing around my ragwort, and this guy was in the middle, and he was showing everybody my cinnabar moths that were on the ragwort. So I kind of managed to convert one person, and then, you know, to the point where he was actually inspired to tell other people as well. So I think there is a kind of feeling that we should be tidy, and even if we try and be untidy, there's some little gardening devil inside us that goes, oh, I should just weed that a little bit, and just, you know. But actually I do think that once people begin to see that they're using far less chemicals, because the, you know, the range of different species they have is keeping pests under control naturally, and things like that. Also, they're doing a lot less work. I know there's a lot more of movement towards not digging the soil anymore, which is a huge benefit, especially if you're a vegetable gardener and you're used to double digging every year. You know, so I think people are slowly seeing these benefits, but it's a difficult thing to unlearn a lesson that you feel is the right thing to do. And we've all, for, you know, many years been told this is the right way. And I know for me personally, as I said, my horticultural journey was incredibly traditional and didn't question any of these things when I started at the age of 20. And then it's taken me a long time. You know, I was re-editing a book that I wrote years ago, my first book, the other day, and some of the stuff I wrote in it when I was much younger and was still had that indoctrination in my head, and I read it now and I think, oh my goodness, I can't believe I was advocating stuff like using chemicals, pulling up weeds. They must be pulled up, you know. But this was an indoctrination that I'd gone through as a young gardener learning. And to unlearn these things is a challenge to us all. But once you do, and once you begin that journey, and you realise we're all just another species in the world trying to coexist in some way that doesn't cause too much damage, and we're increasingly aware of the damage that human beings are capable of causing, I think it's a journey that brings some genuine fulfillment and happiness to gardeners. I hope so anyway.
And you're starting to touch on a subject there which I think about quite a lot, and that is, you mentioned about yourself as a young person learning about growing at the age of 20. I think Woof is very fortunate to have, I'm going to make her blush now, but Alice as a early 20s young person as our, not only a trustee but our joint chair of trustees. So Woof is very blessed to have Alice in that role. And there are quite a lot of young people associated with Woof. We did a survey, and I think our average age came out as 29 years old, which I was actually quite surprised it was as old as 29, because I'd associated it a lot more with gap year type of age. But actually, when we looked at the demographic, we realized that people go woofing when they're at a change in life station, typically some change going on in their life. But for the young people and growing, how the average age of a farmer in this country is 59 years old, which is a shocking fact. And how do we get our young generation of new conscious growers, how do we reach out to them, having you yourself as well on really prominent gardening shows, the young person, the fresh face, full of the enthusiasm and everything, people out there seeing you doing that? I'm sure you're very influential. Do you have any other ideas about how we reach out to the younger generation, the future generation of conscious growers?
It's a really difficult question, and I know it's one that I've been asked a lot. I used to work with school children with the RHS campaign for school gardening a lot, and see all these enthusiastic, amazing kids doing great stuff in their schools and really driving these projects in school settings, which is amazing. But it's kind of like the $1 million question is, how do you really get people to stay engaged with growing? And I think a big reason why people get disengaged is because of their lack of access to land. You know, even me myself, you know, when I sometimes watch these programs and I think, well, that's great, you know, you've got like a 3 or 4 acre garden. I don't have any kind of garden. I have a small allotment, and that's it. And I'm lucky to have that, because waiting lists for those sorts of spaces are huge. So I think there's something to be said for a kind of slight rethinking of land allocation, potentially, you know, to give younger people a space where they can experiment with their growing. And because I really think that young people who are engaged in these sorts of things are very environmentally conscious, and they have a different approach to things from the traditional way that things have been done for, you know, hundreds of years sometimes. So yeah, I think it's a mixture of sort of giving people access to land, and that's where charities like Woofing come in hugely, because it allows people to go and try their hand at something that they may never have had a chance to try before, because so many people grow up completely disconnected from the land. And so to be able to go and, for no money, or, you know, just your travel costs, live and work in a space for sometimes as long as you like. I know people through the last couple of years who were living on the land as their only option of a home, really, because they had nowhere to go through pandemic. They lost all their work, and they've, well, one friend in particular who was living on the land, and she did that then, has now completely changed her career, and she's now a hedge layer. That's because she had access to that land and to that way of life and to that education through woofing. So I think it's that kind of allowing access, providing access to land, encouraging experimentation and change. And I think not being afraid to just call things out a little bit and say things as they are. There's an idea, particularly in gardening, but maybe also in agriculture, that it can be a bit fuddy-duddy and a bit old-fashioned and maybe a bit twee. People think about gardening, they just think about wandering through runner beans and gathering them on a hot sunny day. Where actually there can be so much creativity and ecology and science and all these other amazing things in farming and in gardening, that if you give people the access to kind of explore that, they will find their way. So I think it's a very complicated picture, but with a different approach, more holistically, I think that will allow people to explore their own growing journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that we're trying to do ourselves, we've been trying to do it for a number of years, because Woof is quite associated with travel. And I myself learned about woofing through traveling. I was in Costa Rica, I was in my early 30s, and I discovered all at the same time. I discovered about woofing, I discovered about community living, I discovered about permaculture, all at the same time and in the same place. Which is brilliant. It serves a purpose, it has its place, but what we've also thought is it makes a lot of sense as a woofer to woof in your own country, where you're learning about crops and climate and soils, and you're creating networks all in your own backyard, essentially. So with Brexit and with the pandemic, we've experienced a drop in woofers, but what as a whole number, but what we have experienced is over 100% growth in people from the UK woofing in the UK. So that's something that we want to try and do, because as you said, we recognise that the access to land is an important thing, and there aren't that many other ways other than going woofing to experience that access to land.
No, I mean, when the pandemic first hit, and I was one of those people who was paying rent and lost all my work, and I put my name forward to work as a farm labourer. There was a big movement, and they were looking for people because they were worrying about people being able to come over when travel was restricted so much. And it was quite a few months I was waiting. I knew farmers locally in my area who needed a hand. But the one job that I got offered was living, I think, a 4-hour drive from my home in a caravan shared with other people, for basically minimum wage with 1 day off a week. You know, and it's like, and they say that people in this country don't want to do work, and it's like, well, actually we do. We just don't want to do it under those sort of almost indentured terms and conditions. And it's dreadful that anyone should be expected to work like that in that kind of industry. But if you allow young people in the UK to work on farmland, and live in their own home, not have to live in a caravan on site, where, you know, or all those terms, then it can be an amazing way to get people to come and help. And I'll bet you'd find that there are a lot more willing than are given the opportunity to do it.
Yeah, and I think you're right. And I've had exactly the same, well, I didn't have the same experience, but I had a woofer who had exactly the same experience. She stepped forward. It wasn't a very attractive proposition, so she came to me woofing instead, and I had the benefit of her company during lockdown as well, which was wonderful for me. And
Yeah.
and that is a very nice thing. You've talked about it earlier on, but the connections that you make, like-minded people, as the woofer, but also I must say from the side of the host, some just the wonderful people that you meet. And I'm in touch with so many people that have volunteered with me in the past, and really great relationships that I highly value. So yeah.
And you said
And
something earlier on that was interesting as well about in your own country, because I think a lot of the time we are all really engaged in this, and I've read lots of books about rewilding projects in different countries, where there's a key thing which seems very different, in that there's a lot of space in places like the USA. There's a huge amount of land with not as many people, so densely populated, and also a completely different kind of growing. And so that education to learn how to grow sustainably in this country as well would be amazing for so many people, because it can feel a bit overwhelming sometimes when we are a small country, a small island, and it feels like we're all quite crammed in. So to kind of think, well, actually it is possible in a small place like this. We just have to rethink it, and then visit and learn from places where people are rethinking it and doing it successfully is really great, to kind of spark those possible careers for young people in that field of kind of sustainable agriculture.
and getting people to hear about it, that's the key thing, is how do we get ourselves better known? How do we get it so that people have heard about woof but haven't had to go to Costa Rica or Canada or where do you go, Barbados, to hear about it? It's how do we get it better known in this country? So one of the ideas that we've had, and you don't have to answer now, but we thought it would be really nice to give you a Woof UK membership, and see if you fancied making use of it at all. And it would be so lovely if you did, and it would be even better if we could get it on the TV or published somewhere, you know, create a little bit of a buzz around it.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah, because it's for the greater good, and yeah, it would be wonderful. So,
and it seems that so many people in this country haven't heard of it. The amount of times that you mention it, people go, what's that then? I mean, I even think on that podcast where I mentioned it, the guy, and he works in horticulture, was like, what? You know, it's crazy that people haven't heard more of it. There seems to be a group of people who are really into it and involved in it, and they do tend to be younger people. When I heard about it, it was all on my degree, so people were my age, sort of 23, I think I was. yeah, so just getting people to actually hear about it and use it in every day, where I think in other countries they seem a lot more au fait with it. It seems a much more normal thing, and I don't know why that is. Because
Quite upsetting when it started here in England,
yeah,
in
absolutely.
Sussex.
Yeah, exactly. No, I feel exactly the same way. It's so strange that it's just off our radar. But I think that community form of living has been quite I don't know what the word is, but a sort of subculture in this country for a long time maybe. And in other places maybe it's more accepted. I don't know, that kind of people live in bigger family groups and are used to that much more close-knit community way of life. I'm not sure. We get maybe more and more insular in the UK as the years go on, perhaps. I don't know.
And then when people actually experience it, it opens doors to a completely different perception, a completely different way of life. And like you were talking about, the guy with the ragwork and the cinnabar moths, somebody does it or somebody learns about it, and then they say, hey, everyone else, gather round, look at this, look at what I've seen, or look at what I've learned, look at what I've done. And then they talk about it, and then you get the ripple effect. And one thing that we have definitely learned through Woof is that you're unlikely to hear about Woof one day and join the next. You need to hear about it once, two, three, four times, and ideally meet somebody directly involved with it, whether they've done it or whether they're hosts. You get little clusters around the country of hosts in regions where that a host, a good host, has been talking to other people, and other farmers or smallholders have said, oh, that sounds great, I could become a Woof host, because they've actually met somebody. So the trick is to get people in this country woofing in this country and talking about it, and that will serve as a real life example to give other people the courage to perhaps go to somebody's house that they've never met, to a region that they've never visited, and try and learn a new skill that they never knew they wanted to learn.
Yeah, because it's quite daunting, really, isn't it, when you
Yeah.
put it like that? So yeah, I think it's that bit of confidence building, like you say. If you hear, I heard about it from great friends, and that was like, oh, okay, maybe I could try that, and then doing it, and that enabling you to sort of go as a lone woman, particularly, that
Yeah.
can be quite a scary thing. But to go to places where you feel safe and it's going to be other people there who are like-minded, you could meet other people, and just sort of move around and travel and, like you say, learn a new skill in a safe place. And it's really empowering once you've done it once.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's fantastic. I it's really nice talking to you, Frances, but I feel like I should perhaps, I've been unable to see the chat screen while we've been chatting, so I don't know if we've got any other questions that have come in from people who are watching our conversation who may be keen to know other things about you. Can anyone who's doing any technical things jump in and help me at all?
Well, no, I mean, there is nothing in the chat right now, but if anyone wants to put a question in the chat, then feel free, or you can unmute yourself and ask a question. If anyone has any questions.
Hi, I'm Annie from Cornwall. I have a question, and that has to do with kind of an archival research about the beginnings of Wwoof. It used to have a newsletter, and there would be the host and the hostesses all listed with their names and addresses. And I'm curious, is there an archive of people who were hosts way back in when I joined 1978?
Not really a question for Frances, is it? That's more a question for Woof Admin. And I would imagine that any archives because Woof started way before the days of the internet, there will be some paper records somewhere in our archives. But I can't really speak to that unless anyone else knows any different from the trustees or any other member of staff.
maybe we can come back to that one in the open forum.
I do. So just in my time of being a director, there is someone who has quite a large collection of backdate of newsletters. One of the issues that we might have is that obviously it had contact details in, although they were agreed to be published at that time, digitizing them changes the format. And we would run into GDPR issues, as is the modern world. So some things don't translate in time. But yes, there certainly is an archive of articles and opinion pieces and such. And there has been talk in the past of digitizing all of these, but it is quite a mammoth task.
Thank you. I think that was the voice of Nim speaking. Thank you.
Thank
Nim.
you.
There's a question here from Jane, and it says, can you tell us one thing you have learned from Alan Titchmarsh and one from Monty?
Yes. Well, actually, Monty and I have hardly ever met. So it's a funny thing with garden as well. He's in his garden and I'm in my allotment or wherever I may be. And I think I've only met him 3 times. My sister actually met him before I did, because he walked into a cafe. She was working in Canterbury, and she sent me a text going, I'm going to say hello. And I was like, no, please don't. I'll get fired. But yeah, so I've had a lovely few chats with Monty. If I say I'll learn anything, he encouraged me to start doing Instagram, which is probably not what you would expect Monty to teach. But having never been to his garden, yeah, I don't know him as well. But Alan, so many things. The most important thing, I think, well, is never say anything mean about anybody. That's what Alan always advocates. But I think we always have a sort of a joke, because he was Kew trained and I was Edinburgh trained, and there's a little bit of rivalry between them. So we sort of like always plant kind of compete. He did walk into a garden a few months ago and say, what's this, do you know? And I had to say in front of everyone, with everyone watching me like, no. But luckily he didn't know either, so I didn't feel too bad. If Alan Titchmarsh doesn't know it, then it must be a rare plant. But the main thing I've learned from Alan is just the amazing ability to be able to sit and watch him do what he does, which is the presenting so amazingly warmly and beautifully. And there have been many a time when I've been sitting in the garden on my own, everyone else is at lunch or something, and I'm just there watching Alan presenting to a camera crew, and it's just lovely just sitting there with the sun on you and hearing someone like Alan talk about plants with the passion that he has. So I think that's the main thing I've learned from Alan, is to do presenting a little, which is something that came completely unnaturally to me. I'm very shy naturally, so I think as a lot of gardeners probably are, just suddenly having to stand there with a camera crew in front of you and a director, and there's a lot of people when you're presenting, which you obviously don't see on the screen, but a sort of little audience, and to have to stand and talk, public speaking, was incredibly terrifying for somebody like me. So from Alan, I've learned to just sort of relax and just be yourself. I think that's the best lesson he's ever taught me. Just be yourself, because if you try and pretend to be somebody else, you're going to come a cropper.
An amazing career choice for someone who's shy, Frances.
I didn't expect to get the job. When I was at university, they advertised it, and me and a load of friends from Edinburgh all got on a train and went down to London and thought it would be a good joke. And then when they called me a few weeks later when I was in the pub and told me that I'd got the job, I was absolutely terrified. So yes, it was not something I ever expected to be doing.
And I'm only half an hour away from Monty Don, so if you ever go and visit him, swing by and come and see a Woof Small holding at the
I
same
would
time.
love to do that.
Well, on that note, Anne says she loves your sessions on the allotment on Gardener's World, and you'd be very welcome to come up to sunny Scotland to woof with them in Speyside.
Oh, amazing.
The host.
I was just in Scotland last week. I'll need to go back.
Do we have any other, Taryn? I'm mindful of the time, but do we have any other questions that you can see?
No questions, but obviously you can look at the chat later on. There's a couple of comments.
Is there anything that I haven't asked you, Francis, that you would like to just say or bring out?
It's difficult to think on the spot. No, I can't think of anything else. I think it's just really lovely to be a part of this, really, and just to know that there are such amazing people out there growing and nurturing the planet at the same time is very heartwarming. So yeah, just I really wanted to say thank you for having me and inviting me to be a part of your AGM. And yeah, I think there'll be lots of farm visits that I will have to do over the next few years around the UK.
That would be so wonderful. Yes, if having listened to you and some other of your podcasts, I definitely recognised a like-minded soul in you, and you seem very aligned with WWOOF's values, and that's why I was so thrilled to unearth your passion for WWOOF, and even more so when you agreed to meet with us tonight. So thank you so much, and I would really love it if we could work together a little bit in the future and make the world a better place by spreading the wonderful word of WWOOF. So
absolutely. Well, my plan over the next few years is to try and build up my own little space. Having done lots of TV, more and more, and less growing, my plan is to sort of start my own community thing, which I think part of the reason I'd not come across anything like that was growing up in the southeast. There doesn't seem as much in Kent, where I'm from, of a kind of community-minded way of going about business. Whereas in places like in Scotland and in the southwest, where I am now, there's a lot more of that. So it's really nice to have had my eyes opened to that community projects and how beneficial they can be to people as well. So that's my plan. So you never know, I might even be a host one day.
Sounds like you may. Well, wonderful note to finish that on. Obviously, Francis, you're welcome to stay and watch the rest of the WWOOF business that we have this evening, but also understand that you're very busy and you might want to drop off the call. So as you choose, but thanks once again.
Thank you for having me.
So, okay, in that case, I'm going to hand back over to Alice. Thank you.
Brilliant. So thank you very much, Scarlett and Francis. And please have a look at the comments, Francis, because there are quite a few thanking you for joining us this evening. We will now see an address from Sue Coppard, who founded Wwoof UK more than 50 years ago. This was recorded this year at the 50th birthday party for WWOOF in Scarlett's Garden in Shropshire. And Taryn's got the video and she's going to put that up there now.
Hello, I'm Sue Coppard, and I'm speaking to you because it was me that founded WWOOF 50 years ago. And this is the very weekend of the anniversary of 50 years of WWOOF. And first of all, we must say a ginormous thank you to all the people who've helped run WWOOF since it was going and kept it going. That means ordinary members, WWOOFers, and organisers of WWOOF, and they've been very inspired. And I think it's the successful formula of getting out into the countryside and working on the land that has appealed to people so much, which has helped it spread. Because amazingly, WWOOF is now operational in 130 countries around the world.
I'm just pausing it. Is it showing well for everyone?
It's good here.
Brilliant. I'll carry on.
Which is amazing to me. I just remember when the first foreign woofer came and woofed with us down in Sussex, and she took the idea back to Germany, and that's how it's happened ever since. So we've got roughly now 100,000 WWOOF members around the world, and about 12,000 hosts around the world. And it's done itself, really. Now, I must tell you about FOWO. that stands for Federation of Woof Organisations, because what happened was that there were all these woofs around the world, and people from the outside wanted to ask something about woof, and they really didn't know who to speak to. So we had to form FOWO, the Federation of Woof Organisations, to speak for woof, to represent woof, unite woof, protect and promote and support all woof groups around the world. So FOWO has just had its 8th AGM, and it's going from strength to strength, representing worldwide woofs. Woof does so much, it does so much to help on so many levels. It's not surprising it's spreading to me. It's very good on cooperation. Each woof runs itself, and they do it on the basis that seems to suit them. The members of any woof sort of cooperate together and choose someone to speak for them and take their notes and be their secretary and the rest of it. And it's done on a very informal basis, and it works very well. So it teaches us cooperation, to cooperate to run woofs. It teaches all its members about organic methods of farming and growing, which are so vital to the world. People don't realise how important all this is. And also people that get involved in woof, it gives them a new meaning in life, because it gets them into the countryside and connecting with nature. They meet like-minded people and kindred spirits, and you're helping the planet and protecting the soil, which authorities have stated that the soil's only got about 50 years left. Well, I think that's rubbish if we didn't do factory farming all the time. If we did proper organic farming, there would be no question of the soil losing its quality. So here's wishing the next 50 years of woof as successful as the first 50 years.
And that was Sue Coppard, who was the founder of Woof. But we're now going to hand over to the annual general meeting, and Tony Chalcraft, who will be chairing that.
Okay, thank you everybody. I just, before we start the formal AGM, which we'll try and do very quickly, because the main thing we want to do now is to have an open forum so everybody has an opportunity to ask some questions about Woof. I just thought I might just start by just reflecting on something Sue said there about there being 100,000 woofers and 12,000 hosts. I think I got that right. That's now, if we think about the number of people over 50 years that's been globally, whose lives have been impacted and hopefully changed by Woof, we're talking a lot of people. We're talking millions potentially. And I think that's something we just should bear in mind, because Woof changes lives, and hopefully in a small way it's changing the world for the better. So we'll try and get through the AGM business as quickly as possible to leave time for some general questions. So I think the first item on the agenda, it says introductions and apologies. I'm not sure we have any apologies. If we do, I'm sure Taryn's recorded them. I'd just like to take this opportunity just to very quickly introduce the Woof team, and then we'll get straight on with the business. So we've all heard from Scarlett. Scarlett is Woof's coordinator and keeps Woof going. We've also heard from Taryn. Taryn is, I'm just trying to remember your title, Taryn. It's host, contact and web administrator. And we've got Elaine with us tonight. Elaine deals with membership and finance. And also we've got Mike, who's wrapped up warm in Glastonbury with a cold. He's social media liaison. So that's the Woof staff team. So for those of you who've not met everybody before, those are the people who really keep Woof going. And then from the trustees, we've got Alice, you've met. She's co-chair. So I'm Tony. I'm also co-chair. We've got Nim with us tonight, who's been with us for some time, who's been treasurer in the past. We also have Matthew Pumphrey, who's up there in Scotland. Matthew joined us a few years ago. And we have two apprentice trainees. We have Andrea Chandler and Ruth Bergen. So they're also with us tonight. So that's the WWOOF team. And without any further ado, we'll go on to the minutes of the previous AGM, which were held online a year ago. If anybody who was present would like to approve those as a correct record. Somebody prepared to do that? Alice, I think you were there. Can you do that to move us forward? Yeah.
Yes, I can approve those.
We're all happy with that. Those minutes are available online for anybody who wishes to peruse them. They're not very exciting, so I wouldn't bother. So if we're all happy with that, if we can move on to the actual AGM annual report. That has also been made available online, so you can inspect it in detail if you wish. I'm just going to give a very quick summary, and then if we want to take any questions on that, we can. Just two things to say by way of introduction to that. First of all, this is an annual report for the last financial year. So that runs from April 2020 to March 2021. And obviously quite a lot has happened since then, which we can talk about when we have maybe the open forum later. And just, I think two things I need to point out. There's a couple of little omissions on the report that I spotted when I was looking through earlier. On page 14, for those anybody who's a real financial, likes to find little errors in the financing, we've got something slightly wrong on there. We say the actual net surplus that we made last year was 13,819, not 8,000 and something is stated. And the amount we've carried forward is 132,693, not the amount stated. So things are actually better than it says. So I'm sorry about that error. And there's also another slight error on page 21, but I'm not going to go into the details unless anybody really wants me to. So just to quickly run through the report, obviously the predominant thing throughout the financial year was COVID. WWOOF has traditionally been built on travel and it's been built on meeting people. And both those things were a bit difficult in 2020-21. And that really posed a challenge for WWOOF. And it continues to pose a challenge now. This really meant WWOOF had to kind of rethink what we were doing. And I think the biggest problem potentially we faced was, is this going to cause a big drop in WWOOF's income? Is woofing going to more or less dry up? Are there going to be no woofers? And if that's the case, how is WWOOF going to be sustainable? Well, fortunately, although we did experience a big drop in woofer numbers, we lost about 40% of a normal membership. We didn't actually see the complete collapse that perhaps we foresaw. So things weren't quite so bad as they could have been. And I think one positive thing is that host numbers stayed pretty good as well. Because though we were faced with such a potentially difficult situation, what we did decide to do was make use of the government's furlough scheme. And so staff were furloughed on and off through the year. And this really made a difference. So without making use of the furlough scheme, financially, we would have run up a considerable loss during that year. What we ended up with was a surplus of nearly £14,000, but it's important to bear in mind that we received £29,000 from the Coronavirus Job Retention Scheme. So without that money, we would have made a considerable loss. But having said that, we've ended the year in a very sound financial position, and funds, we have plenty of funds. We have a lot of money in the bank. And one of the questions for trustees and staff in the future is how to spend that money wisely in promoting WWOOF when we think the time is right. There's been a few other issues that come up during the year. One of the big issues that I think we face is Brexit and the impact of Brexit on woofing. You might think, well, what's Brexit got to do with woofing? But pre-COVID, about 60%, 50 to 60% of our woofers came from the EU. And they could come into the UK, they could volunteer and work without any restriction. All that changed in January 2020. Well, as we moved into this calendar year, 2021, the UK exited the transition period, and so woofers coming from the EU were subject to the same restrictions as those coming from the rest of the world. And that's potentially going to have a big impact. Exactly what the impact will be, we don't really know at this point, because COVID has kind of disrupted international travel. So the number of woofers coming to the UK from outside has been much reduced. But potentially this could change Woof quite a lot. But as has already been mentioned in the discussion with Francis, we're seeing a much bigger number of UK woofers, and that's a very positive thing. So we're getting a lot more UK woofers, but whether that will compensate for the loss of overseas woofers, we don't yet know. And I think that's a big thing that we really need to think about and take forward. There's just a couple of other things I want to say. Woof is different from other organisations like HelpX and Workaway because we have staff. We actually have people who are behind the scenes and do things. And this year's been very difficult for staff because people have been furloughed and so on. And I really would like to thank, on behalf of trustees, all the staff for being so flexible, so understanding and so supportive during what's been quite difficult times. So thank you, Scarlett, Mike, Taryn and Elaine. Thanks for all your support and understanding and help. And just to end, just a few other things to say. Woof's been around for 50 years now. That's a long time. A lot has been achieved, but Woof needs to look forward. We need to think about all the kind of issues we need to address. I think woofing today is just as relevant as it was 50 years ago, but things have moved on and Woof needs to move on as well. And there's some big issues we should be thinking about. We should be thinking about how we involve a much wider range of people. We attract a very limited demographic. We should be thinking about how we can tap into a lot of other issues like health concerns, about social and other injustices, about social isolation. We need to be thinking about, as Francis, I think, brought up, access to land. And perhaps most of all, we need to be thinking about the big issue of the day, and that's the future of the planet. So I think in the way that trustees, staff and all the members of Woof sort of think about the future and how Woof should go forward, those are the kind of issues that I think we need to address. So that, I think, is where I'd leave it. If anybody's got any questions on the report, please do let us know now. Otherwise, we can take more general questions when we get to the open forum. Just going to wait and see if anybody's got any specific questions on the report. If not, the next agenda item is presentation of annual report, is appointment of the independent examiner. That basically is our accountant and auditor. So Woof is a limited company and Woof is also a charity. So we're required by law to produce an annual report and to have this audited. And we have somebody called Salman Makbul of Agm Accounting in Milton Keynes, who has been our auditor for a number of years. And I'd like to propose that he is reappointed. Everybody happy with that? Yep. And then we come to the election of directors, which is trustees. So we've introduced the trustees. So we have 4 existing trustees. We have 2 apprentice trustees. And before we go any further, I think Nim would quite like to make a statement. So I'm just going to pass over to Nim.
Yeah, hi there. So my name's Nim, and I've been a trustee. I was trying to think about this maybe since 2012, 2013. Anyway, so it's been quite a while. So I joined in my early 20s, and I've had to make the decision, unfortunately, to step down as a trustee going forwards. This is really just because things have changed so much in my lifetime. When I joined as a trustee back nearly 10 years ago, I just left working on sick farm teaching animal husbandry, moved into a horticultural job, and I now work as an environmental scientist within river contexts. So Woof has been a big part of my life, and I've met loads of really wonderful people. And one of the things that always amazes me is just how brilliant and diverse the network is in terms of people's experiences and what they're looking to get out of woofing. So it's been quite the adventure for me, and I'm very thankful to everyone who's supported and hosted me over those years.
Well, thanks, Nim. Nim has really made quite a big contribution to Woof, and I think I'd certainly be very sorry to see Nim step down. So thanks, Nim, for all your help and support over the years. That's really appreciated. And what I would also like to say, we're always on the lookout for new trustees. And if there's anybody out there who feels they would like to join this, this team, we'd be very interested to hear from you. So we currently have, well, with Nim stepping down, we have 3 full trustees and 2 in what we might call training. There is a process. It's not particularly testing, but if anybody was interested in becoming a trustee, I think Scarlett would be very pleased to hear from them. So I'd just like to emphasize that at this point. So continue with the election of the directors or trustees. I believe that all 3 existing trustees, 4 trustees, that's myself, Alice and Matthew, I think we're all prepared to continue to stand. So can we elect those 3 people? Everybody happy with that? Anybody unhappy? Just for the record. Okay. Now we also have 2 trustees who are in the process of becoming full trustees. So that's Andrea and Ruth. And although we can't, I think, formally appoint them as trustees because they're still in the process, if we just had, if we could just recall that everybody is happy that these trustees can continue to go through the process, and when they complete that, they can become full trustees. I think that would be helpful. So are we okay with that as well? Can we formally record that? Okay, thank you very much. And that leaves us to any other business. So I think what that means is there any other business relating to the annual report or admin matters for Woof? If not, we can throw it open.
Taryn, I think Taryn had something she mentioned earlier on.
Okay, Taryn, far away.
So I just had to unmute myself. I just wanted to note on any other business, it's that time of year again where it's all very festive and some people are buying gifts for each other. So if anyone was interested in buying a Woof membership as a gift for their loved ones, please do. I've put the link in the chat. Bit of a plug there. Thank you, everyone. Buy gift memberships.
Yes, thanks, Taryn. Of course, gift membership, the ideal Christmas present for that person you can't possibly think of what to buy them for. So yeah, thoroughly recommended. So buy one as soon as you can. Okay, shall we then throw the floor open to any questions on any matters woofy? So it's 4 minutes past 8, so we've got 26 minutes where we can throw the floor open to any questions anybody has. And I'm going to ask Taryn to sort of keep an eye on the chat and throw anything in, but you can also ask them verbally if you want, and I shall pass them over to whoever we think is best equipped to directly answer. So does anybody like to ask a question?
Hello. Sorry.
Hello.
Yes, I have a question. Yes, we have been hosts for maybe 5 or 6 years. We have recently become a small holding, actually having been a farm before with about 300 sheep and 10 cows, and we were sort of organic in principle. The question I have is, I'm interested to know of of the wolf hosts in the UK, how many are actually farmers? I'm interested particularly because we have had quite a few woofers on our farm, and most of them, if they come from somewhere else or were going to somewhere else, were not going to farms. So usually to gardens. So I rather got the impression that we might be in a minority.
Well, I'm going to pass that question to Taryn in a minute, who may be better placed to answer. But I think the quick answer is farmers are in a minority. But I'll pass to Taryn, who may be able to give a little bit more statistical data.
I think I can give you statistics from a couple of years ago, if that's helpful at all, because I couldn't tell you the statistics in the last few months, but certainly a couple of years ago, small holdings had the highest percentage out of hosts. Small holdings were up there. Then it was house and garden. Then it was farms. And then it was things like woodlands, CSAs, and other types of places. But small holdings were the biggest chunk of our hosts.
Thank you. That's interesting. I was simply asking out of interest, not trying to make any sort of point. And now that we're small holders, we're in the majority. So that's nice. If it's nice to be in the majority. Thank you.
Have we any other questions?
Just going back to, so was it Annie who asked about the archive?
Yes. Yes,
just going back to that, perhaps Elaine might have more information, but we do have some host directories, paper copies in our archive. I'm not too sure how far that goes back, possibly late 80s. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe Elaine would know better on that. But like Nim said, we do have very old newsletters from, I'd have to look that up. But we do have them. I digitalized a lot of them that came from the people who used to run WWooF many years ago. So if you are interested in them, perhaps email me and we can chat about that.
Great, thank you so much. Thank you. So, I have a question.
Yes, Michelle, please go ahead.
Hi, I'm Michelle. I live near Glastonbury and have a small holding here with my husband. It's probably a really stupid question, but has there been any woofing this year at all?
Yes, there has.
There has.
I think the answer is we never really know how much actual woofing takes place even in normal times, because although we know the number of members, we know the number of hosts, we know the number of woofers, we don't actually really know what they're actually getting up to.
Right. Fair enough. No, I'm asking because in the past I've had emails from people interested to come here, and I've answered, and we've had a few woofers and it's been lovely, but I haven't received any emails, so I didn't quite really know what to do. I mean, I suppose I could have gone on the website, but because I was so used to just hearing from them, I assumed that there wasn't any going on. Have I made some awful mistake?
I don't think you've made an awful mistake. It's certainly the case there's a lot less woofing going on, but there is woofing going on. But I think, again, it's probably best if I pass that to anybody in the staff team who might want to say more. Maybe Scarlett or Elaine or Tara.
Well, I can say a little something, and yes, I've had quite a lot of interest from woofers this year, and it has been perfectly possible. I tend to have volunteers for longer periods of time, so people have stayed with me throughout the lockdowns. In fact, the same girl stayed with me throughout both of the long lockdowns, which was very nice. But also with Owen, who's also on this call, who is a day woofer, or was back then a day woofer. He lived down in the town, and he would come along, and we devised a protocol that we had different tools. So any tools that he used, he put in a wheelbarrow and we left out in the sun for 3 days. We stayed away from each other. I would cook lunch, but he'd bring his own plate and cutlery and so on, and we would use that. And so we thought it all through because we wanted to carry on, and Owen was using it as part of exercise, and also felt it was an important thing. We're growing food, it was like a key worker service, so we felt completely okay to carry on, but we were very careful in the protocols that we put in place over that. I had quite a lot of interest from volunteers contacting me, so I definitely think it's worth you having a look at your profile. It may be, there's various things, and Taryn's a great person to get some advice from. She's the host contact, so I do suggest you have a discussion with Taryn. But certainly things like, the feedback that I get is if you've got a lot of photographs on your profile, it makes you more popular. If you've got reviews on your profile, it makes you more popular. Certainly, if you have lots of good information on your profile, it gives volunteers more of an idea of what's going on. And also, if you update your profile, it does actually send you to the top of the list that people who are looking on no criteria in particular will see. So there are ways and means of getting yourself up the rung of viewing, if that's something that you wanted to do. But for other hints and tips, I think Taryn would be a great person.
It was simply because I was so used to getting emails from people interested in coming, and I didn't get any. And I didn't actually, and because of the pandemic, I didn't think of looking at my profile and the website. I just assumed, oh, but not carrying on because of the pandemic situation. So it sounds as if it's my fault for not actually going onto the website and looking. But I'd never had to do that before because I used to get emails. Do you follow me?
Yeah, sure.
But
sure. And
I will in the future. About the future. So thank you.
Glad to hear it. And if we can help, do get in touch.
Okay.
I think one of the key things that's worth emphasising is that the number of UK woofers, as has been mentioned several times this evening, has gone up quite a lot. And so the kind of nature of the average woofer is changing. So I think a lot of us who've been hosts for a long time have been used to thinking, you know, many woofers are coming from overseas, they're coming for a few months, they're going to woof around the UK and they're going to go home again. And that accounted for nearly 70% of our woofer membership a few years ago. But the way things are going now, we've got at least 50, 60% are UK based. And we don't know whether that's a temporary situation or whether it's going to be a more permanent situation. In some ways, that's good, because it means lots of the negative travel aspects about woofing, you know, they're not so much to the fore. But of course, it does have other implications in terms of the amount of woofers that we have. So we'll have to see how that kind of evolves over the next few years. But any other questions? Taryn, is there anything in the chat you want to pick up?
Not necessarily in the chat, but
Matt Holland had his hand up, and also Matthew Pumphrey had his hand up.
Okay, Matt, do you want to go first?
Yes, I'm speaking to you from Lower Shore Farm, where we love woofers and we love everything about it. And we have a monthly woof weekend. And I think Sue Coppard first mentioned the idea of woofing at an event at Lower Shore Farm. And Lower Shore Farm is also the home to the Swindon Festival of Literature, which I run. And for many years, because woofers talk about it and come to the festival, I've wanted to have an event at the festival to celebrate woof and about woof. And so what I'm really asking is, do any of you know a good writer, a good speaker? And I've looked and I haven't really found one on the matter of woof and how life-changing it can be, almost more life-changing than Park Run, as a phenomenon that really can do something for people in a wonderful way, to health, to education, to so many things on so many levels. Do you know, is there anyone who's written a book? Is there any, do you know of any good speakers? I know we had Francis on a minute ago, but if any of you know any, could you write to us at Lower Shore Farm, and we will put on an event at the Swindon Festival of Literature, which has had Ian McEwan, David Attenborough, and it now wants somebody who speaks well and has written brilliantly about Woof.
Well, thanks very much, Matt. I think that's certainly something we'd like to explore and take up. I'm going to pass that over to Scarlett, because Scarlett has done a little bit of writing on the history of Woof, which we may want to take forward. But Scarlett, would you like to say a bit more on that?
What I would like to do is just say I would really like to take this forward with you, Matt, and whoever, yes, it would be great to think of somebody who would fit the bill and get Woof out there in that way. So I will make a note and I will be in touch. Thank you very much. Wonderful, thanks.
And Anne up there in Scotland has suggested, what about Frances? She is just writing a book. And I think I'm not sure whether Frances is still with us, but if you are, Frances, maybe you'd just like to reflect on that one. I think, Matthew, you wanted to ask a question, I believe.
It was a question, but it's already been answered, Tony. So it would be my other question. So I have nothing further to add, other than a rider, perhaps, to the first questioner about the numbers of farmers as compared to other forms of hosting. I'm a farmer, but I'll be looking for woofers to help with our garden next year, because we've been accepted for the Scotland Garden Scheme. That's not my skill, that's my wife's, I have to quickly say. And when I spoke to another farmer recently, just en passant, as it were, she said that she wanted woofers, but only to help her with her glamping activities. You know, you were always asked to diversify, and she's doing that. So you could be misled, I think, into thinking that people going farming, in fact, they're doing something totally different on the farms. But that's just an observation. My question's already been answered.
I think that touches on another issue that Woof has discussed in the past, and that is the acronym Woof. So obviously at the end of it, worldwide opportunities on organic farms. But I think we have sometimes questioned whether farms is still the right word to describe what goes on in Woof. But it's a tricky question. And it's not just a question for Woof UK, I think it's an international question. But sometimes when I can't get to sleep at night, I start thinking, how could we take the acronym Woof and turn it into something else? But WWOOF is quite a difficult one to come up with something. But when you're trying to get to sleep tonight, if you want to think about that, and anybody has any good ideas, I think we'd be interested to hear them. Anybody else got any questions? We've got 12 minutes left. Anything in the chat, Taryn, you'd like to highlight?
Oh, Fleur, carry on.
Yes. Hi, I'm Fleur. I'm from the Netherlands, so I might be a bit the odd one out here. I'm planning on woofing for the first time next spring. So I was wondering, because I thought, well, it is possible to go, even though with the COVID restrictions. Do you have any tips? Because I think, do you now need like a work visa, or how difficult is it in these conditions to come to do woofing in England? Okay.
Well, that's a very good question, and it's one that's quite difficult to give an easy answer to.
Yeah.
I'll give you a quick summary, and then I might pass over to either Matthew or Scarlett to give a bit more. So there's two elements to it, really. First of all, there's the COVID situation. So we don't know where that will be in a few months' time.
No.
But at the moment, you need to take 2 tests. So you need to take a test 48 hours in the period 48 hours before coming, and then you need to take another one 2 days after coming here, and you need to quarantine until you've got a negative test. And you have to pay for those tests as well. The other issue is entering the UK. So you can no longer come and just work or just volunteer, but you can come as a tourist without a visa.
Yeah.
And our understanding, although we're still doing a lot of checking on this, is that you can volunteer for 1 month in a 3-month period as part of a visit for the purposes of tourism. But it's important to say when you come into the UK border, if you say something like, I'm going to work on a farm, you are likely to be in difficulties.
Yeah, because then you need a work permit. So
Yes.
yeah.
And getting a work permit or a visa is a very complicated thing. It's expensive, and it's not something at the moment that WWOOF can facilitate.
No, I understand.
Okay, but I think that's a key message to everybody attending tonight. That if particularly for hosts, if you're expecting visitors from the EU or indeed from anywhere in the world, this is an important message. We can't say publicly, we can't advocate clearly misleading immigration or border force, but you do, if it is possible to enter the UK as a tourist, and although WWOOF is itself still exploring this and we have a lot more work to do, we do believe that, well, it's certainly possible that you can come in as a tourist and volunteer, but we have still some work to do on that, and that matter is somewhat cloudy, I think we have to say at this point.
Yeah, because I would love to visit for 3 months or more. So, well, I'll see what I can.
Yeah,
I have my plans. Yeah, I'm really planning to come. So, and then maybe I have one more question. If I can find advice on for a first-time woofer, if it's better to start for a small holding or a bigger or a farm. It depends, of course, of which I want to learn. Is there anyone that I can chat with to help me out there a bit, maybe?
Well, I'm going to pass it over to anybody who has WWOOF who would like to give some advice on that one. Particularly, I think we've got somebody just was on the chat.
There's so much choice, and it's, yeah.
There's a really good article on the website. I don't know if you've read that. I think Scarlett wrote that quite a while back, which is like 10 top tips, 10 top tips for woofers. And obviously you can use the filters on the find a host.
Yeah.
But yeah, I suppose it does depend a lot what you are looking for. And, you know, there's some great hosts out there. Probably a lot of great hosts in the Zoom meeting. I'm sure people will want to host you. So next,
he said some woofers that have done some woofing. Maybe they have some words of wisdom if anyone wants to speak up. It was quite interesting to see Karen Simmons saying that she's woofed for the first time this year. That's really great.
I read that. Yeah, it might be lovely to have some, yeah, context with people.
I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, we can now.
Yeah, hi, Angela. Yeah.
My tip when I was woofing abroad and also in the UK is to obviously have a look at the notes that are written by the hosts, but choose a cluster of hosts that are nearby to each other when you're traveling on your own. So you have the confidence, the reassurance that if one place doesn't suit you, you're not too far from another place. And also that if one place really does suit you, you can go back to it easily.
That's a good tip. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Andrea. Right, we've got 6 minutes. Has anybody else got anything they'd like to ask, or any advice for WWOOF, or anything you think we could do better, or anything you'd like to congratulate WWOOF on?
May I, as a member of the team, I'm Elaine, just say thank you so much to all of the trustees who've worked so hard with us for years, particularly during the pandemic. I've worked directly with Tony and have really appreciated his support, but they're volunteers and it's been magnificent the way that they've helped us and kept us going. So thank you from my heart, and I'm sure from everybody else's heart too.
Yes, I agree. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Elaine. Thanks very much for that. But we don't want to discourage anybody else from joining. As a trustee, you don't have to work hard necessarily. You do have to contribute. So yeah, I mean, it's been a difficult year for WWOOF. It's probably been the most challenging year since I've been involved with WWOOF, which is probably about 10 years now. But hopefully things can only get better, as Tony Blair famously said. And yes, so anybody who would like to join the trustee team, as I've already said, would be very interested in hearing from you. We've still got 5 minutes. Eileen has got a question. Eileen had 2 French students in the summer. Eileen, do you want to elaborate on that question? No. Anybody else got any questions or points they'd like to make?
I'd like to make a quick point, if that's okay, Tony. Sorry if people are sick of my voice already. But to Michelle as well. I don't know if you're aware, but one of the options hosts have on the website is contacting woofers directly. So for example, if you think, gosh, I haven't had a request for a long time and I could really do with some woofers, you can go onto the website, go to find a woofer. You can use filters if you want. So maybe you're looking at, you know, woofers in a particular location already, or something like that. And you can, if you see a woofer that has particular skills that you like, or just looks like, you know, they're up to go somewhere like yours, you can contact them directly and, you know, say something like, hey, I just seen your profile, you know, you look great, fancy come to woof here, or, you know, something like that. So that's an option for hosts as well.
Thank you. I was actually aware of that. I just feel a bit stupid because I just honestly thought, because of all the COVID stuff, that there wasn't any woofing. I mean, I don't know. I think one of the issues was we used to have a caravan in our orchard where people could stay. If we had woofers, they'd stay in the house, which didn't really bother me. But my husband's had sort of pneumonia and problems, so it was this whole safety thing. So I suppose from my point of view, I didn't really go there. You know, if we had somewhere else, but anyway, I'll see what I can do for this coming summer, but thank you for your help.
I think there's also some blogs as well about people woofing during COVID, so you could still probably get some tips and advice off those people.
The other thing we have done is we have maintained advice, and there still is some advice on the web pages about the protocols and so on you can follow. So we have tried to sort of issue some advice on woofing during the time of COVID. Well, there's only a couple of minutes to go, so I think probably, unless anybody else has got any questions, we ought to wrap it up there. I don't know, Scarlett, would you like to say anything else tonight? Well, thank you very much, everybody. I think we were all pleased to hear Frances, and I was very impressed by lots of things she said, particularly some of the things about land allocation, access to land, which I was very pleased to hear. And also the story of the ragwort on the allotment. I think that was a nice one. So I think we probably need to close the meeting there. So thank you very much, everybody. Woof is 50 years old, and it's going to keep going. And we're going to go into the next year, and we're going to try and sort of think about how Woof can change. But I think the most important thing is we're still here. So thanks to all those members who've stayed with us, particularly the hosts during what's been quite a difficult year. And thanks for attending tonight. And also thanks to the staff team and fellow trustees for keeping everything floating along. So thank you very much, everybody. And we'll call it a day there. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for coming.
Bye-bye.
Trudy, say hi.
Hi, Trudy.
Bye.
Bye, Trudy.
Hiya.